Hi, I'm Edith. Welcome to Talking Shop with Property Bank. Well, you see that I'm in watercolor, 水为财. That means I'm talking about money-making matters. We're going to dive into case studies of successful non-residential investments. We all know the game is about flipping. But I think in Singapore, we do not encourage flipping because no matter what, we are a slightly more developed country. And in a developed country with all the infrastructures that's built up, flipping cannot be just like, just you sell your option and that happens. For non-residential properties, I will tell you, you are in for disappointment. We are not in this game of like get rich fast. And I think as Property Bank, because we are in this industry and in this business, we always feel that you should be prudent with your investment. So I mentioned about flipping, that's obviously number one. That you can, of course, that will happen for you if you go and buy a rundown property and then you decide to restore it and the property would, look nice, and of course you kind of on-sell it to another, investor, or you sell it to an end user. And of course, for the second part on flipping, it's about buying new launch. I think for you guys who are watching, if you are already dabbling quite a fair bit in new launches for residential, the same also happens to non-residential properties. There's always money to be made when you buy new launch, you wait for it, for the TOP, you pay your progressive payment slowly, and finally it gets completed. And then of course you are in the whole rush of getting tenants because you need to service your mortgage. So then few years have passed and probably in a land-scarce Singapore, you would know that property prices do go up a little bit. That means to say that you are in for flipping if you are buying new launch. Okay, the number two is wait out for capital appreciation. And that's where you'll hear some of my case studies later. It's quite natural again in Singapore where we are very, very land tight. And I think the infrastructure, our government is doing a great job. So if you have in the past buy somewhere that's less populated, a little bit remote, then suddenly, voila, you have an MRT station. So that's for investors who buy and hold it out until they get a capital appreciation. Or the third point, which is for you to make your money from real estate, is to be a landlord. Slow and steady, you probably don't need to finance your mortgage a lot. So you have this cash that over time, even if your loan kicks in, you start to collect rental income. And that rental income can either go to offset your mortgage or it can provide you as an allowance. So for myself, I'm a landlord for Burlington Square, one of the units. And yes, I'm still paying the mortgage. So the tenant is paying for my mortgage. But time will come when the property is fully paid up. And that is when I totally have this rental as a form of allowance, and probably I don't need to work, because I don't spend a lot. So I think that's how we look at landlord as a third thing that can allow you to make wealth from properties. And finally, for those of you out there, you don't like the hustle of managing properties, I think REIT is definitely the one. But of course, today we are not just going to cover, about the goodness of buying a property from the 4 bullet points that I've just shared. I'm going to tell you case studies, real life stories. Let's begin with office. So I think for office, we all know that the rental yield is quite low. And also with all this hybrid working, you would think that office may not be the correct choice because the entry quantum is higher. Yes, for sure. And perhaps my rental is also that little bit. But let me just quote you one real case study. Well, of course, he's a maybe a billionaire. But I think for Singapore, he's not exactly the veteran investor. So this person actually formed a company in Singapore And what happened is that he looked upon Singapore, the assets in Singapore, the most important being office. So he started entering into buying of office units. And he didn't buy low. He bought, in fact, higher than the previous transaction, but he bought multiple units. So total, he actually spent quite a lot. He bought, like, in terms of square footage, over 70,000 square feet. Now that was in 2021, okay, back in COVID. And in 2024, I would say that the price has gone up, from 3,600 per square foot to 3,800 square feet, already crossing that for the recent transaction. He is still holding the properties because so far he's been renting out the properties consistently, and actually he wants a certain target rental for his properties. But let's look at it from a layman's perspective. You may not have that cash for 70,000 square feet of space, but for the resale that is actually from 2021's 3,600 plus to today's 2024 that is 3,800 plus per square foot. For freehold tenure type of office buildings, I would tell you that it is very achievable. So gain-wise, through this 3 years, it's actually about 200 per square foot. And when I work in terms of the yield, well, it would not make you feel overly happy, but it's 5.5%. And don't forget, he continues to get his stream of income from the rental for the properties that he rents out. And that will go to cover his mortgage. So this is the first story that I would share about the asset being office, and he has successfully bought it and it's just sitting on a pot of cash. And in time to come, he will be offloading and he's already making $200 per square foot straight away. Yeah, so that's on office. Next up, let's come to industrial. Well, for some of you who have actually watched my earlier YouTube, you will know that I quoted an end user, which is an industrialist, that bought a standalone corner unit industrial factory. So now that I look at the stats, I will actually share with you the numbers in detail. So he bought one of the factories, 5-story building that is in fact in 2002. That's a long time ago. Everything will definitely be cheap during that time. Okay, and what happened during the years? He used this space for his own business, and then after that he on-sell his business, and finally he decided to turn a landlord. So he's the one that collects rent and plays golf, and on top of that he has, of course, the sale from his business that he was able to buy for his next generation. In fact, he has rebuilt landed properties for his next generation. Let's look at the numbers. So 2002, he bought his factory for mere 5.7 million. Now 5.7 million, I think you can only buy a small 2-story shop house, for example. So anyway, what happened was, so for this years throughout, until 2022, I was heavily involved in his marketing of the property, and he sold at 13 million. So that's actually 128% more. And if you annualize it, 6.4% every year in terms of capital appreciation. Don't forget, during the time that he tenanted out, he actually get his money every month, about over $50,000 in his pocket. So you guys out there will ask the next question, wow, because he's also a big timer, he actually have this cash to buy a 5.7 million in 2002. Back then is in fact a lot of money. But why not you? Because you are just starting today, right? I don't want to paint the overly rosy picture, but from all these footsteps, from the office and the industrial, you know that, in fact, for non-residential, we are seeing this year as a very interesting year to watch because foreigners, due to the ABSD, definitely will look into non-residential. And why not you? Because you are in Singapore. And of course, now let's go to the next different category of property, retail asset. So retail asset, one of the good things is that it can be very small little spaces, but that needs a lot of active management because we know that for retailers, the moment they cannot make it, they actually abandon the shop and there they go. They don't pay you rent. So it needs a bit of active management, but when you look at this as an asset, you ask me the question, can I actually own it 1/million? You can, but it's for few hundred square foot. So that's very high per square foot. So let me tell you about my friend. Okay, for this, I can disclose the property name. So she actually bought Far East Plaza for $600,000 15 years ago. So she doesn't really care too much because that cash is not a lot of money for her, even though it's quite some time back. But as of this year, she is cashing out and it's like 1.5 million. But you look at the amount that has jumped, and again on her rental collection through the years, you will know that this is not a bad deal after all for you to grow 600,000 then and now 1.5. Of course, I want to remind you, at today, it is not so easy to get a $600,000 that you buy a property. And how many folds would it make? So I and amongst my colleagues, our group of property bankers, we are having this sharing, which is on 27th of April, and we're going to have a face-to-face meetup with you guys. And this is about transiting your investments from residential to non-residential. You will know that every bit of the story that I tell from investor A, user B who turns to investor, and C, which is run-of-the-mill, very typical Singaporean that invests, they all have the same stories, and we are glad to share with you all these stories. But the road to where they are being successful is not just one straight road. And we are here to tell you some other stories and at the same time guide you along. Like our channel, subscribe, and definitely for you guys who are keen to transit into non-residential property investment, click the link in the video for registration. And let's catch up. Bank on us for properties.